For my final project, I decided to compare the word cigarette and how it has transformed over years and in different areas, especially with more modern times. So the words you're going to be seeing me use are cigarette, fag, bogue, dart, and cig. Just to start off, if you do a general basic search for tobacco, which is the main drug inside a cigarette, it's the addictive part of the cigarette. You see a lot of cigarettes. You see a few cigars, which is the original where smoking tobacco originally started, and you see tobacco plants. But in your first few photos, the first photo that shows up is a cigarette, and that just shows you how big cigarettes have become. On the second page, I just looked up a cigarette, and obviously there's just going to be tons and tons of photos, and actually some of these are now, as you can see every once in a while, some of these are actually starting to become electronic cigarettes. And you can see how right here and here, how they're starting to become more popular also. So that even on Google searches, they're coming up. Where a long time ago, you wouldn't have seen e-cigs a few years ago, even weren't even a thing. But now they come up when you search a cigarette. Now, if you even look up darts, you're not going to find anything to do with a cigarette, just because it's a slang term and how it is used. It's very hard to be able to find slang if there's another term for it. And even when you were here, if you look up a fag, it's mainly bad jokes and mean slurs and memes, but not even many things about people being gay or things. It's just kind of more cruel and weird photos. There is one photo of a guy lighting a cigarette after scrolling down for some time, and one more photo too. But at the beginning, if you see a cigarette and then a faggot of sticks, because a fag has a multiple three meanings. It means someone's gay. A bundle of sticks is all a faggot's known for, and a fag's also known as a cigarette. Then if you try to look up bogues, there is a guy smoking a cigarette right here. A man smoking several cigarettes right here. Yep, smoked that last bogue. It is more photos come up for this. But if you were to just look up bogue without the S, it just comes up as a company. And the longer you scroll, you just see their products. You don't really see, you see one small e-cig, which I find very interesting because I never hear the slang terms like darts, bogues, or cigs used to talk about an electronic cigarette. Then if you look up cigs, it'll be a combination of pictures of cigs and e-cigarettes, just because as time goes on, the e-cigarettes becoming more popular. They're called e-cigs, and you're gonna see a lot more with of e-cigs start coming up with slang too, as just separate from cigarettes. But if we just look on Google Trends, I just wanted to look at the past 5 years right now. Not many people use the term bogue, and that doesn't surprise me. I feel like that's more of a modern day thing. But you can see that the most common word is cigarette or dart. But I don't believe that dart is as popular for the same reason as cigarette is, because dart has a multiple meanings. But now, if we were to just look at 2004 to present, which is about the past 13 years, but make it easier, go from the year 2000 till now. Nope. Now, the data you see now is from January 1st, 2004 until present day. As you can see that for the main part, that cigarette and dart have stayed relatively close, where cig is very popular and seems like it started to really peak around 2013. It's becoming a better slang, whereas fag is relatively not used as often. This is just inside the United States. Now, if we were to go to worldwide, you can see that you see the same thing, except Sig again has its peak a little bit higher. But dart is such a common word with so many things that it is very hard to even justify it in any of these comparisons we're going to look at. But the next one I really wanted to look at was Great Britain, or the United Kingdom. Because in the United Kingdom, they refer to cigarettes as common term as cigarette as a fag. But even in more recent times, since 2004, you don't hear it as often. Um, you can see that it's not used as much. That even if you look around here, that cigarette is the most commonly used term, and then behind that, dart. But I think dart is very hard to associate when you're talking about this one. Even the top 100 electronic cigarette is very changing the reason why a lot more modern times cigarette is becoming such a popular word. Even for fag, a fag cigarette was in 2004, it says, where it was most popular with the top searches in a certain region. But you can see that it's the second most commonly searched thing for fag. Bogue compressor, nothing to do with cigarettes. Dart charge, dart board, dart tag. If you look at any of these, none of these have anything to do with cigarettes, but they're all words that have dart inside them. For sig, sig is e-cig, e-cig liquid, e-lig, e-cigarette. These are all the biggest. That's another reason how the words cigarette and cig are becoming more used, just because of modern days. Now, even if earlier when I talked about it, you can't see, but Bogue is Urban Dictionary, has a cigarette. To smoke a cigarette, I want a Bogue. A cigarette, a cancer stick is something they're also called. If you look up a dart, cigarettes, smokes, cancer sticks, same words. It's very, see, in 2006 it started, but I had never heard this word until very recently. But it seems like it starts as early as 2003, where if you look on, when we looked at our trends, it seems like it hadn't been a big word talked about. And this is just in web search. If we did this in a news search worldwide, cigarettes are going to be the most commonly searched. Now, if we look at anagram, over time, cigarette is still the most commonly used word between the 1800s and 2008. Um, and for a good reason, it's going to be like this. And um, even if you look at the word just tobacco, you're going to see a big increase in the use. As you can see, tobacco is the most commonly used word, especially starting in the 1800s. And this is due to tobacco's been around forever, but during the 1800s, we became small. It was used in small amounts, but it really became one of the biggest selling crops in North America as soon as Europeans started settling here. It became very big with cigarettes. The first cigarette came around 1865. So the word tobacco has been used before the 1800s, and cigarettes, you can see, is the word really comes out of, started a little bit before 1860, but really starts taking off at 1860 with that gradual incline to where it is now. Well, comparatively, as we know, Bogue won't be big, so if we take that out and just compare it with cigarette, fag, cig, it still does not have much use for fag or cig in the English language. But if we go to British English, I hope to see there's a more of a spike in the word fag, just in general, over the word of cig. And that just shows how different cultures really use the word differently, and that over time things really can take a change. But for the most part, when you look at things for a cigarette, it locally the names can really change. And I've realized that when I was looking at the United States. When you look up the United States in the online in the Google Trends, you see that they have a regional area, and a dart is used more than the word cigarette in Texas when you're talking about the news. But if you were just to do a web search, darts are searched more than cigarettes in several different states. To me, I have a feeling that that can't just be because of darts, the game of darts being so big, but I have a feeling it's because of the combination of darts being such a big game and cigarettes being referred to as darts in those states. South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Idaho, Texas. And I believe, zoom in, Delaware also. Looks up dart more than cigarette. But then, even here, if you look up, you can look up where these words come in the most, and you can see that cigarette, kind of see the areas where people search about them and are interested. If you see in the United States, the biggest, it'll show you now, electronic cigarettes are biggest. There was a spike in the word around 2012, and it's mainly been on the downhill. But electronic cigarettes is just a bigger classification of the word cigarette, which just means that over time we could see different words interchangeable. Whereas we see e-cig now because it's shorter. Eventually, you might see people calling them e-fags or e-darts. I highly unlikely you see it being e-fags, but it could very much change. Just if you look back at the United Kingdom, looking at it by sub-region for the word fag in the United Kingdom, if you just look at your most common word looked with it is gay. But if you just look down, number 3, 4, 5, all have to do with smoking, whether it's ash, just the word smoking, or cigarette in general. Which means that in the United Kingdom, the word fag is still very commonly used with cigarettes. Even number 12 is cigarette. Electric fag, which I could be wrong, but if I were to look up an electric fag, I would most likely find a photo of an electronic cigarette. But I am not going to look that up for the sanctity of this video integrity. Also, don't know what could show up. But over time, you see that it becomes very even now in Great Britain, they do refer to them as, some people refer to them as an e-fag. But in the United States, if you go to the term fag and look up what's the commonly looked up, you're not going to see in your top few, or if in any of them, you will see anything to do with smoking. They all have to do with the word having a gay definition. But if you look up Bogue, at the same time, there is all things having to do with compressors and pieces. So just because the word Bogue is a commonly slang doesn't mean that it's common to everybody. I know I've heard it used several places around Buffalo, New York, and Western New York, and only really inside the New York State area. I haven't traveled outside the states or outside the New York or the country where you hear people referring to cigarettes as bogues, and very often you never hear them referred to as darts unless I'm in Buffalo. Dart is a term I've only heard in Buffalo, so it just goes to show you that just because a word is highly used like dart on the internet does not mean that everyone's referring to a cigarette as a dart either. And I feel like my Google search of the images really perfected that and showed that, just because one local area refers to something as that, not everyone is going to know. It's been a great year. I'd like to thank you guys all, and I hope you have a blessed summer. Thank you for watching and learning.